everybody, Suz here, back with another keto dinner ideas video, and this week it is all about keto breakfast. We are cooking 4 different keto breakfast recipes, including a slow cooker one. If you're like me and you like having breakfast for dinner sometimes, and these are perfect for you, or you can even cook them for a keto brunch or meal prep for your lunches for the week. Please hit that subscribe button and join our crew. Let's get into it. So first up this week, we are making this awesome keto white pizza frittata from World ME, original recipe linked down below. To start with, I have 12 large eggs in a metal bowl. I'm adding to that 1/4 cup of extra virgin olive oil, along with 1/4 of a teaspoon sea salt and 1/4 teaspoon ground black pepper, adding 1/4 teaspoon ground nutmeg, 1 teaspoon of minced garlic. And then I'm just getting in there with a whisk and breaking each of those egg yolks, and I'm just gonna whisk this all together until it's nice and combined. And next I'm adding in 1/2 cup of ricotta cheese. If you're already a subscriber here, you know I'm always saying double, triple check your ricotta because some of it is loaded with carbs and some of it's very low. To that I'm also adding 1/2 cup of grated Parmesan cheese, and then we are adding in some spinach. Now the original recipe calls for 9 ounces of frozen spinach. I had a 12-ounce bag. I removed some of that, took the rest of it, microwaved the spinach. Easiest way to get the excess water out of it, I find, is to just put it on a little mesh strainer, push it through, and then I wrap the rest of it up in paper towels and just squeeze it over a sink until I get that out. We're adding that to our mixture and just breaking it apart into smaller pieces as we go. I will say that I still thought this was a little too much spinach for this recipe, so next time I make it, I'll add less. And then I'm just taking a spatula and kind of poking that down in there and mixing this all around until it's all nice and combined and our ricotta cheese is broken up. Grabbing a cast iron skillet. This is a 10-inch one, I do believe. If you don't have cast iron, you could just do this in any oven-safe pan, or you could even use a casserole dish. Pouring our whole mixture into that, and then we're gonna top it with about 3/4 cup shredded mozzarella cheese, and then they called for 1 ounce of pepperoni. I just put pepperoni on there evenly spaced. Then we're gonna take this whole thing and pop it into a 375-degree oven for 30 minutes. This is what it looks like when it comes out. It's nice and puffy and yummy, and it smells so good. And here it is, sliced and served up. You can see the inside of that, all of that nice melted gooey ricotta, but you can also see that, as I said already, it does have a little too much spinach, but spinach is good for you, so I said, hey, let's just go with it. Next time I will probably decrease that by half. Next up, oh my gosh, this is my favorite recipe of the week. It is a keto ham quiche Lorraine with caramelized onions and Gouda by Low Carb Maven. Her original recipe that's linked down below is great, but it was a little bit more complicated than I would normally like, so I worked my best to simplify it so much for you guys. So in a large mixing bowl, I have 2 cups of almond flour. I added 1/4 teaspoon sea salt, 1/2 teaspoon pepper, 1/2 teaspoon dried thyme, and then I'm just mixing that around to make sure all of my dried ingredients are nice and combined before adding in 2 beaten eggs. And then I'm gonna mix this all together until it forms a dough, and it mixes together so easily just with a spoon. Now taking some extra virgin olive oil cooking spray, I'm coating my hands, and then I'm gonna get in there and kind of knead this together a little bit before separating it out. Now she refrigerates her dough in between steps, and she also rolls her dough out and cuts it and trims it and does all of that. Again, like I said, I'm making this very simple. So breaking it apart, 1/2 slightly smaller than the other half, grabbing a 10-inch springform pan, and usually with these I will line the bottom of them underneath on the outside of the pan with foil to keep them from leaking, but because this was such a thick crust, I just went ahead like this, spraying it all with cooking spray, even though it's non-stick. Her recipe, she lines the sides and the bottom with parchment as well, but again, just trying to make this as simple as possible. After I have that nice and coated, going back to our dough, I'm taking the bigger of the 2 halves, and instead of rolling it out and cutting a circle and doing all of that, I am just pressing this into the pan. My hands are nice and oiled. I didn't have a problem with it sticking at all. And I am just going to make sure I press this out as evenly as I can until our whole bottom of our pan is covered. You know, making sure there's not any areas that are overly thin. We want this to all stay together well, and we don't want it to leak out in the oven while we're cooking it. And I am making this crust before I get into the rest of the recipe because it's just easier to do it that way when I'm cooking and filming it for you guys. But if you want to save some time, because we are going to be caramelizing onions in the next step, and you know, that isn't exactly the shortest process. So if you want to save time, you could actually just make this crust while your onions are caramelizing. That'll be an easier way to do it, and that's how I would do it if I wasn't cooking and filming it for you. Now I'm taking the other part of our dough and kind of rolling it between my hands to kind of see how much we're working with, and I'm just going to pinch off a little section at a time and line the side of my springform pan. As I am pressing this in, I'm kind of using my fingers to even it out from the top edge of the pan, going about 3/4 to an inch from the top. And then I'm also using my fingers to make sure that I connect this dough to the dough that we lined the bottom of the pan with. Just making sure that those seams are nice and sealed, again, to keep it from leaking. We want it to all stay together. Since I didn't use parchment on this or even like grease or anything on the pan and just used the spray oil, I was like super nervous that this wasn't going to turn out well, but it did. So I'm just showing you this. Fast forward to the next clip if you don't want to see all of this, but I just want to show you, you know, in great detail here how we are pressing this all in together, making sure our seams are sealed, and lining our entire pan. So there you go. That's what it'll look like. Now, popping that in the refrigerator while I get started on our onions. So for that, I have a large skillet over medium-high heat for the meantime. Tablespoon of olive oil in the bottom of our pan, and I'm dumping in 1 medium onion. I sliced just into half moon circles there, you can see. Now, her original recipe, she uses a mixture of 4 ounces of onion and 4 ounces of fennel bulb. Again, we're trying to simplify this, so we are just doing the onions, and I am just going to toss these around until they're all fully coated in our oil and just let them cook like 2 to 3 minutes on medium-high heat. Now I'm going to cut our heat down to medium-low, add a half a cup of water, put the lid on, and I'm going to let these cook about 10 minutes like this to get nice and soft. After that, we're taking our lid off and stirring these and leaving the heat on medium-low. It's about a 4 on my stove. I am just going to stir these around and let them continue to cook until they start to get brown but not crunchy. And like I said, this is more of a lengthy process. So I spent about 20 minutes doing this, and they could have technically gone even a little longer. But you can see here, they're starting to get just a little darker in color. We want them to get a nice brown color. So once they get it to about this shade, and like I said, I could have let them go longer. They're still nice and soft, not crunchy at all. I'm going to go ahead and remove them to a large bowl that's large enough for us to mix everything else on top of it after we get this part done. To the same pan, cutting my heat back to medium high, another tablespoon of oil, and I'm adding some diced ham. Now the recipe calls for 8 ounces of chopped ham. I'm just using 7 ounces because I just bought a boar's head uncured ham steak and diced that, and it was 7 ounces. And the reason I preferred that one is because it only has like 2 carbs in it for this entire amount of ham, and ham is one of those meats that you really need to double check your carbs on. Now I'm just tossing that ham all around until it gets a little brown, and then removing it to the dish as well. I'm going to set this mixture to the side and let it cool off some. Once it's cooled, I am adding in 8 large eggs along with 2 cups of heavy cream, half a cup of water, and then she uses the zest off of 1 lemon. I'm just using 1 tablespoon of lemon juice. I'm gonna add 1 teaspoon of fennel seed so that we can still get that little bit of that flavor in here to give it that awesomeness, since we didn't use the fennel bulb. And then I'm adding 1 teaspoon ground black pepper and about 1/8 of a teaspoon ground nutmeg. Here we have some Gouda cheese. I'm using pre-shredded because it's cheaper. I like the unsmoked kind. I find this at Aldi. It's hard to find unsmoked Gouda. You probably like smoked Gouda. Most people like it smoked. I don't. Taking 1/3 of a cup of that to the side to reserve to put on top later, pouring the rest of it in. This is an 8-ounce package. And then I'm taking a hand mixer on low, and we're just going to mix this all together so it is fully combined and it adds a little air to it. Sticking that to the side, I've got an old rusted up, beat up baking sheet. just in case the springform pan does leak. And I am dumping our whole mixture into that. I'm gonna take my spatula and just kind of spread out the mixture some because all of our ham and cheese kind of lumped into the middle there. And once I have it spread out, I'm gonna top it with the remaining 1/3 of a cup of Gouda. And I'm putting this whole thing into a 350-degree oven. This is gonna vary. I did mine 1 hour and 10 minutes and it came out perfect. Just a little brown on the edges here, jiggly in the middle. She did hers less. You're gonna have to really watch that. I let it cool for a ½ hour, and then I'm gonna show you on camera how we took this off because I was so nervous this wasn't gonna turn out. Unclamped the springform pan and lifted it away, and I'm so stoked that it did not stick to the pan even without using parchment. You can see the side of the crust there, looks delicious. Sliced into this sucker and plated it up, and look at this. Oh my gosh, this was so good. And that teaspoon of dried fennel seed really just gave it that little bit of something extra. The Gouda cheese is just so delicious. I feel like most quiche Lorraines I've had are made with Swiss cheese, but loved this. Perfect for doing a meal prep. It does take a little time to caramelize your onions, but if you were having people over for a brunch or something, they would never know this was a keto meal, and you can stick it in the fridge, you can reheat it later. Perfect keto breakfast recipe. Next up, throwing together these simple fried eggs and green pepper with a side of sausage. So to start with, in our pan, over just medium-low heat, I sliced some bell pepper into rings, and I'm just sticking a couple of them in there, and I am putting 1 large egg into each. And then I'm gonna cook these over easy, so I'm gonna leave them just like that. You can see some of my egg white kind of spilled out from underneath. Don't worry about it. It's gonna happen because your peppers aren't totally flat to your pan. If you like yours hard fried, you can break your yolk. If you like them over easy, you can flip it. Topping it with a little pink salt and a little fresh ground black pepper. I'm just gonna leave these like this. Medium low, again about a 4 on my oven, and let them cook for about 6 to 7 minutes. Just topping them with a little shredded Parmesan cheese. And then I'm just gonna take a spatula and trim the little bit of egg white that kind of escaped from underneath and plate these up. And I'm gonna show you how easy and perfect they come out of the pan for just an easy sunny side up egg. Look at that. Yum. Oh my gosh. This is so simple and so delicious. I'm just showing you, cooking a couple, but these are so easy to cook for guests or to cook for your family, just, kind of made to order how everybody likes theirs. Here it is plated up with a couple sausage patties. I just had those going in a little pan while I was cooking the eggs. You can just start them right before. I love that these peppers are crisp on top, softer on the bottom. If you like your peppers soft all the way through, you could just put them in there, cook them for a little while before you add your eggs, flip your peppers over, put your eggs in, continue on. The sausage I'm using is Gosby country sausage patties. I like those because they have 0 carbs listed per patty, so you know it's less than 1 per patty. And then with our peppers on there for a little bit more carbs, this is perfect for a keto breakfast. If you're not fasting, I usually fast in the mornings and then would have this for like a keto lunch instead of breakfast. So good and so cute looking for something so simple, right? And then last up this week, we did a slow cooker keto breakfast recipe. It is a slow cooker spinach and feta quiche. I did burn this a little bit, but we're gonna show this to you regardless. So to start with, large bowl, 8 eggs. The original recipe linked down below, they use milk. We're replacing that with a cup of heavy cream and 1 cup of low sodium chicken broth, whisking that all together until it is nice and combined, adding in some fresh baby spinach. This is about 3.5 ounces. I just did 2 cups packed. I did not chop it. You could if you want, and it might give you a little bit of a better result. But again, trying to make this as simple as possible. Taking a big spoon and just kind of mashing all of that spinach down because it makes it easier to mix that way. Mixing that in some. Adding 1 teaspoon of minced garlic. Adding 3/4 a cup of crumbled feta cheese. 1/2 cup of shredded Parmesan cheese, and just a little pinch of sea salt because that broth does have some salt in it. Little boxed ground black pepper, as much as some of you hate it when I use boxed ground black pepper. And then I'm just mixing this all in together well. Taking our crock pot, spraying it down with a little olive oil cooking spray on the sides and the bottom. Pouring our whole mixture in. using a spatula to even it out on top, and I'm gonna top this with a half a cup of shredded extra sharp cheddar cheese. Now, the instructions for this recipe linked down below say cook on low for 7 to 8 hours. I knew that that would be overkill and not to do that. That I should probably cook it no longer than 5 hours on low. But instead, I set the timer for 7 hours and was like, I'll just go check it periodically. Got tied up with my kids, toddlers, did not check it. This is the recipe after 7 hours. You can see the right half of the screen here looks totally burnt. It was. And the left side is overcooked as well. The middle was nice and tasty. Even I screw up. As much as I cook and film and show these recipes, I screw up. I screwed up like 3 recipes this week. That's why y'all didn't get a video last week on Easter. Here you go. This is it. Plated up, overcooked. This recipe still tasted good. The middle of it was great. So I recommend no longer than 5 hours on low. Start checking it at 3. Eggs cook super quickly, right? Great concept, great ingredients, and all in all good to go. So there you are. That's this week's keto dinner ideas. We're doing breakfast for dinner this week. Hope you enjoy all of these keto breakfast ideas. And as always, leave any comments that you have, video suggestions down below. I have some that I'm working on that some of you have already suggested. Subscribe to our channel. Share this video with your friends. The more eyeballs we get, the more encouraged we are to keep making them. And until next time, bye.